Hey guys, 7.3. This is the end of the French Revolution. I am eating some applesauce while um, recording this, so that's delightful. Like our goat friend likes to show us here, this is the radical part of the revolution when things get a little crazy, when they get a little bit extreme, when they get radical. So, yeah, I can't do that anymore. Here's the menu. Yeah, so let's get into it. Now, last place we were at in 7.2 is we saw all these changes that are taking place in France after the opening scenes of the revolution with the bread riots and the Bastille and all that. All these changes are molding France into a place that might be unrecognizable. Well, this guy Edmund Burke, who's a member of England's Parliament, writes in 1790 that he feels this French Revolution will end in disaster and chaos. And his argument is that if you're going to bring change to a country, you better do it slowly, right? You better do it to where people can get used to those changes before, things go south. He's kind of judging them from afar in England, but he's got a point because we're starting to see things get a little bit more uneasy in France, especially after the king tries to escape all that. Now, some evidence that Burke might be right is that in the course of the revolution, as it is continuing on and going through, the National Assembly's troops are violently cracking down on protesters who want the king removed after the escape. So here we have the group that was for change and progress, the National Assembly, now assuming the role of those who are putting down and keeping the status quo, while there are others who want things to change. So again, Edmund Burke is like, you know what, this is kind of I don't know, you're putting all these changes in at once, it may not end well. So kind of to skip a step or two, but about a year later, after the king's failed escape, France will declare itself to be a republic. Now, with a republic, you have no king. The king is still, though, alive, right? I'm not going to kill the king. We wouldn't do that, but you abolish the monarchy. You take the monarchy out of play. So the National Assembly is quitting at this point, a little bit earlier than this, actually, seeing as they have accomplished their task. And younger and more idealistic / radical members of the National Convention take place. So what I mean by that is that these men and women are extraordinarily extreme in terms of how far they would go to get those goals of the revolution accomplished. And the radical Jacobin Party takes control of the National Convention. So the National Convention radical already, but now the radical is going to be running the show, and they're led by two men named Maximilien Robespierre and Georges Danton, and those two will be the names that kind of direct where the Jacobin Party is going. Again, a radical group that seeks to do whatever they want and whatever it takes to get their vision of a society based on liberty, equality, and fraternity, which were, of course, discussed in the Fine 7.2. So the Jacobin Party, a little bit more about it. There's Robespierre. I think he's getting kind of a flat head or whatever. So the Jacobin Party, the party, right, political party inside the convention, is supported by the sans-culottes, who are well-off urban workers. And, oh, the crap. Okay, sorry, I have to change this. We're going to take this and whoop. Nope, wait, hold on. Go away. Why aren't you? Okay, here we go. Okay, so the sans-culottes, well-off urban workers. They are well-off street rats. Okay, they have a little bit more money. They could be shopkeepers. They're certainly not, perhaps in the Great Cat Massacre, what we saw from the workers in printing shops, but they still would be considered urban poor, and that they are going to favor direct democracy. They're known as sans-culottes because they literally go without, or that's the word sans in France, or sans means without the culotte, which is the stocking that many of the rich would wear, right? Where their pants would stop here, and then the rest of this would be a stocking, or a breech, right? It's called a culotte, and they go without that to show that they are people of the people, right? I mean, they're not of the rich. They're going to favor direct democracy, which gives literally an equal voice to all people in government, and everybody gets a space to share their wishes. So it's even more radical than a representative democracy. These people and the party, though, and this is going to transition to where we're going here with the extreme part of this, but the party and the people here are continually concerned for threats to the revolution, that people are going to come from the inside and outside to try to stop the progress that has been made. And the guy who kind of leads the charge there, his name is not Burp. His name is Jean-Paul Marat, and he is a journalist that names names. So if you are considered to be someone who might oppose the progress that is being made, Marat will write your name in his newspaper, and then the appropriate actions might be taken. So Marat is a journalist that names names. Now, the fear of foreign invasion to kill the revolution just totally plagues the country, starting in about 1792. And they fear that a foreign country will want to come in. This is the big point. A foreign country will want to come in, kill the revolution, put the king back in charge. Okay? Literally the only way to do that, or at least to erase that fear, is to get rid of the king, right? Because then there's nobody that these foreign countries could say we're going to put that government back in charge. And that leads to this. And in January of 1793, Louis XVI is executed as a traitor to revolutionary ideas. And this represents the mark where France cannot go back, right? If you're going to go forward, you cannot go back. And if there's any marker of the past that's still there, then you've got to get rid of that marker. And that's what the leaders of the convention and the Jacobin Party want to do, is literally erase history so that France cannot be taken back to where they went. And of course, the guillotine is the marker of how this was done. And we talked quite a bit in class about the guillotine. I'll probably post some videos on the classroom to kind of give you an idea of it if you missed about this machine. But anyway, it's used to eliminate Louis XVI, and it's going to be used going forward much, much more by what's called the Committee of Public Safety. So again, you've got these threats, right? You've got internal threats, people who would stop the revolution from the inside, want to go back the way it was, or maybe slow down the change that's happening. And we'll talk more about those changes here in a minute. You also have external threats, right? Foreign countries who want to put things the way they were. So in order to stop those threats, the convention nominates 12 men to become an executive committee. It's called the Committee of Public Safety. And that committee is going to have dictatorial powers to stop all threats to the revolution. To be able to have that power, this committee suspends the Constitution. So, like, it's funny that the revolution was all about liberty, equality, fraternity, and yet here goes the Constitution, right? This convention is led, or committee is led by Robespierre, and they are incorporating the idea of Rousseau's general will, that Robespierre will say that, you know, the people want an enlightenment-based society, one based on these three general principles. So we are trying to accomplish that for the majority, right? And yeah, we're going to have to go through some sucky times to get there. But we can interpret what the people want, and this is what they want. All right, remember, Rousseau's general will, kind of the majority consensus rule. So Robespierre is basically interpreting what the majority is, that he feels. Okay, one of the things the committee does is it starts the law of maximum to direct the economy in wartime, in which the government controls the economy. They fix prices and wages. So if you have an invasion, you can stop the invasion and its impact on the economy, right? So like if there is an invasion of Austria, per se, then you can make sure that like bread prices don't rise or something like that. Well, again, think about how would that be interpreted in terms of Enlightenment ideas. Think about Adam Smith and the invisible hand and how that might differ or be supportive of that idea. So again, the government here with a lot of dictatorial powers to handle these threats. So let's talk about the external threats, or the external enemies. So here's kind of a big point, okay? if I'm a foreign country, let's say I'm the king of Prussia, I cannot have this revolution continue. Because if it does, what's to stop the lower classes in my country from wanting to do the same thing? If I'm the king of Austria, if I'm the king of Spain, if I'm even the prime minister in England, what's going to stop the lower classes from rising up and overthrowing it, right? We already had a revolution in the colonies, the American colonies, and now we have this revolution going on in France. What can you possibly do to stop this virus from spreading, this virus of enlightenment, freedoms for the people? Ugh, right? We got to get rid of that. So that's why you would think Austria and Prussia would want to go in and stop that revolution. Well, this is the thinking from French leaders. So they're like, we know the Austrians and Prussians hate us, so let's go declare war on them and stop them from attacking us, right? Maybe like jump on them, preemptive strike. So anyway, we got war. Okay, so that's kind of the big point, is that France is at war while all this revolution stuff is happening. Their military grows to 1 million men strong, thanks in part to what's called the levée en masse, or the national conscription, right? This is basically a move to bulk up their army so that they have the strength to be able to handle multiple conflicts at once. Again, think Enlightenment freedoms. Do you have the liberty to live your life, or is your country telling you to go fight? Again, kind of the tension there, right? France, though, does very well. They win key victories against Austria and Prussia, and you can think now the effect that has is that it kind of validates what this revolution is. I mean, if you have military success, then you kind of have the idea that, well, we're doing something right, you know. Otherwise, we get defeated on the battlefield and then smashed. So it kind of emboldens revolutionary leaders to handle their internal enemies this way. And it's a period known as the Reign of Terror. This is what most people associate with the French Revolution. Summer of 1793 to 1794. Anyone in France who is seen as a potential enemy to Robespierre and the committee's power, if they are not enthusiastic enough about the direction France is going, then they are swept up in this hysteria and executed. It's so bad that the committee has spies out everywhere that report on people who express opinions that they're not excited enough, or they oppose what the committee is doing. Those people often would be sent to the guillotine. And with the guillotine, it would be a public spectacle, it would be a public event, and people would just roll in, person after person, and get decapitated, representing, though, in Robespierre's vision, bringing terror or purging France of the old ways so that France cannot go backward. If anyone stands up against the direction we're going, you're a weight, you're an anchor, you hold us down, we have to purge and get rid of you. And Georges Danton, a former convention leader, Olympe de Gouges, Enlightenment figure for women's rights, Marie Antoinette, the Queen, all go to the guillotine during the Reign of Terror because of various differing opinions. It is an extraordinarily hypersensitive paranoia event that leads brother to not trust brother, neighbor to go against neighbor, and it's all being stirred by this committee which seeks to lead France through the tunnel before it can blossom into something greater in a full deistic, enlightenment-based society. So, Reign of Terror, the image is like this, in a large plaza up on a wooden scaffold, where basically anyone who represented a link to the past, nobility, clergy, bourgeoisie, peasants, anyone who had a differing opinion or someone who represented something of the past, they were in line to be purged, right? This chart shows you that the diversity of executions in this one sample set of this one area, where it shows you the percentage of the kinds of people who were killed. I mean, you could be anyone, right? This was more of an ideological event as well as a status-based event. Much more ideological status, as it shows you the vast majority of those killed aren't belonging to one certain social class. Now, what is Robespierre doing? Okay, he's wanting and desiring to create a deist France and eliminate traces of the old regime, meaning that, again, pushing it all out, right? Pushing it all out and trying to create something new. Part of that is a period called de-Christianization. De-Christianization, where he's trying to eliminate all religious elements from the society. They change the calendar to include no Sundays. They close all the churches in Paris. They change road signs to eliminate any reference to a religious connotation, trying to create a society that is not based anyway on what France's past was. And Robespierre goes as far to create what he calls the cult of the supreme being, a deistic national religion that France would worship ideas of reason and tolerance and logic and these kind of abstract ideas that were popular at the time with the Enlightenment. But Robespierre wants the society to be built on those ideas and not anything that had divided people in the past, like religion, for instance. As I said in class, Notre Dame converted to the Temple of Reason. Not surprisingly, this creates incredible widespread opposition to Robespierre in particular, not just on the committee with kind of the extreme direction he's taken it, but literally every other member of the population starts to wonder, is this guy really right for us? And that kind of opposition boils over at an event in Paris in July of 1794, where it's this big festival to celebrate this cult of the supreme being, as it's being called. And on this huge giant mountain that is constructed in the middle of Paris to represent their offerings, so to speak, toward these gods of reason, Robespierre comes out, and some accounts say he was dressed in a toga at the top of this mountain to kind of celebrate this new France that had been created. And it is with this event, some people are like, oh my God, this is kind of a little weird. You know, he's starting to question again the leadership that he is supposedly bringing. And this leads to a coup, a rebellion against Robespierre. And on July 27th, 1794, Robespierre, in front of the National Convention, is shouted down, denounced, criticized, and arrested as Robespierre's extreme behavior is led to his betrayal. And the military has been convinced, the National Guard has been convinced by more moderate members of the convention that he has to go, that this bloodbath for a year of the Reign of Terror has soured the French population. Shocker, right? So he's arrested, and then the next day, he is sent to the guillotine with his associates, which include his brother, Saint-Just, who is another extreme leader, Armand Saint-Just, or something Saint-Just. But anyway, they're sent to the guillotine, and Robespierre is executed. The Committee of Public Safety ends, and now France can breathe. Because with the end of Robespierre's leadership, the Reign of Terror has ended. So the question is, what next? Because we've had 5 years of instability, of rapid change, of incredible loss of life, of incredible levels of bloodshed. We kind of go back to where we started with the bourgeoisie. And they reassert their authority as Robespierre leaves this power vacuum. And the bourgeoisie form a new government called the Directory, or a new executive, rather, called the Directory. And 7.4 is going to kind of explore the Directory and its strengths and weaknesses. But again, after this Reign of Terror ends, the French are looking for stability. They're looking for safety. They're looking for maybe not necessarily a change of the ideology of Robespierre, but they're looking for an end to his methods. And that is where France is going to enter a period of kind of questioning. And while in the United States, George Washington has just started and is preparing to end his second term, France is in incredible distress because of scenes like this, which had lasted for the good part of 5 years, where people would be brought in the tumbrils, in the wagons, up to the National Razor, and executed. So what's next? And that will be the question that France must face. Hello, Jean-Paul Marat. We will not talk about you at this point. So, one thing to wonder right here at this point at 7.3 is those goals of the revolution. I'll leave you with this thought. How well were they achieved? If the goals were liberty, fraternity, and equality, how well did the revolution achieve them or get to them? And as we go into the next period of French history with Napoleon Bonaparte, we will ask ourselves again that question. How does Napoleon achieve liberty, equality, and fraternity? We will explore that at a later point. So, goodbye. No, wait. Okay, goodbye.